Good day, everyone. We are from A-Spec, and today we are going to be explaining about asexuality in Indonesia.
So first, we're going to talk about the Indonesian asexual community and also the awareness in Indonesia. There are several groups such as Facebook and WhatsApp groups, but they are mostly used as a communication platform instead of a platform to spread information. And that is what we do here in Indo-Aspect. Our focus is to spread information, and it also includes community building, but for now, because we were only founded during 2021 AceCon, we're going to mainly focus on spreading information. Currently, there are a few members of the core team, such as the co-founders. I am Dea.
My name is Astrini.
You can call me Tildon. Hello.
And I'm Soso.
There's also our graphic designer, GL, who is currently unable to attend. Okay, and then the biggest challenge for Indonesian asexual community, there's the societal attitudes towards sex in general, expectations surrounding life after marriage, and also the view on having children and why choosing to be child-free is currently a very hot topic, because there are lots of motivations for having children in Indonesia for several reasons, and the normativity of blood lineage as opposed to adoption. And also on divorce, especially from abusive relationships, the sexualization of divorcees that are mostly focused on women or those assigned female at birth, and also the invisibility of marital rape. And lastly, the pushback against teaching consent in discussions of sex education and the reform of a penal code law.
So a little bit of addition on the points about having children. So the majority of people in Indonesia are Muslims, and in Islam, there is a teaching that says having children is a good deed, and it's basically a sin, or it's basically kind of thought to be like wrong if you don't do that deed. So that's why Indonesians are mostly adamant on having children, and that's why they don't really gravitate towards being child-free or even adoption.
So on the point of religion and sexuality in Indonesia, here we have a diagram showing the percentage of the 6 recognized religion in Indonesia according to a census conducted by the Ministry of Domestic Affairs in 2018. So the biggest religion with the most believers is Islam. 86.7% of Indonesian are Muslims. And following that is the Christian Protestant, 7.6%. And after that is the Christian Catholic for 3.1%. The other two recognized religions are Buddhism and Hinduism.
And Confucianism.
Yeah, also that. And because religion plays such a big part in the life of Indonesians, it only makes sense that the sexuality would be mistaken with celibacy by Allo Indonesians, because celibacy is more known, and being ace sometimes makes us seem like a model citizen abiding by the religious laws in Indonesia, even though in reality it's not, because we are choosing to wait until after marriage, but it's because we are aces. And also because sex in general is still considered taboo. Even talking about sex is still considered taboo. So not having sex in your teenage years are still considered normal enough that aces can pass as allos quite longer than in other countries. And so we are going to talk about Christianity, Catholicism, and Muslim, as currently our members are either Catholic, Christian, or Muslims. So we cannot really talk about Buddhism or Hinduism because we feel that we are not able to represent them. So in these three biggest religions in Indonesia, people mainly don't understand the difference between celibacy and asexuality. In Catholic religion, the pastor and the nuns are required to be celibate and aren't allowed to have any kind of romantic relationships. And for the people, there doesn't seem to be any requirements of being celibate. In Christianity, the priests are allowed to have relationships and a family, and the same as in Catholic, there doesn't seem to be any requirements of being celibate for the people. And for the Muslims, especially the conservative ones, people who date or have romantic relationships are frowned upon by the public. And instead, they mostly do ta'aruf, which is kind of like a matchmaking.
Okay, so a little bit of addition for the point about Islam. So people who believe in a more conservative value of Islam, they don't actually believe in dating, and young people who do date are looked down upon. So a lot of people also mention that dating is haram, and ta'aruf is kind of like matchmaking, where usually the participants are they're matched by either their parents, or sometimes they can also be selected, for example, like by giving like some kind of a CV, and then usually they would their families would meet, and then they would get married, and then they would actually start getting to know each other after marriage. So basically, in conservative Islam, romance isn't really allowed unless you're already married.
Moving on to the point of general sex education and knowledge of asexuality in Indonesia. The Indonesian Ministry of Education has never put sex education in the syllabus for schools, whether they are public schools or private schools. There are a few schools who added out of their own volition, and in general, there are usually Christian schools or private schools, and the material is also tend to be very limited. And for teenagers, they might get that talk from their parents, older siblings, or school teachers when they reach pubescent age, but sometimes they don't get it at all.
So for schools that do add sex education in their curriculum, sometimes the topics are still limited. So basically, they only cover things about how the reproductive system works, and they also mention about STDs. But the schools rarely talk about things such as safe sex practices or consent. They also don't explain about the different types of attraction, and they also don't explain about gender identities. So even in schools that do deliver sex education, sometimes the content is pretty limited. And another way that people get sex education is from their parents, but that is also depending on how open-minded their parents are, because since sex is still a very taboo topic in Indonesia, parents tend to dismiss any kind of talk about sexual education. And a person's knowledge about sex education in Indonesia would also depend on where they grow up, who they grew up with, and also how privileged they are, because sometimes people who are more privileged may have access to better education, or maybe an internet connection, or maybe other important sources, while people who are less privileged might not be able to access those resources.
Yeah, and as Ashrini has mentioned, because of the lack of any standardized education, a lot of Indonesian youth get their knowledge about sex from the internet. And currently there's a noteworthy resource, the website reprodukasi.com. It's a new website aimed to educate Indonesians about safe sex or maybe even other kind of important things.
So reprodukasi.com is, as mentioned before, it's a relatively new website, and the content is very youth-friendly. The language they use is very easy to understand, and they do explain the most fundamental topics about sexual education. And surprisingly, they even have a section with a short primer about the LGBTQ spectrum. And when we found out about that, it was like very refreshing, because there's not really a lot of sources that openly talk about or mention LGBTQ identities.
Moving on to gender diversity and asexuality. In Indonesia, some traditional cultures acknowledge the existence of more than two binary genders, but currently in modern society, people's understanding of gender is binary and very rigid. It can be difficult for people who identify outside the binary to express their gender identity.
So it is pretty ironic how the traditional Indonesian society actually has values that are very inclusive and diverse. But in the past, we have been colonized by some other countries, mostly Western countries. And because of the cultural exchange and also because of the laws under colonial rule, a lot of our traditional values were changed to fit their views. And even though colonization is over in Indonesia, the effects are still evident until the modern day. So a lot of people in our society they either don't acknowledge that our traditional values are actually very diverse and inclusive, or they either deny it and they rather believe in other values that are more modern but less inclusive.
About relationship, dating, and marriage. Indonesian society is very amatonormative, which would give a different set of challenges to romantics. And because of the religious society, a lot of people acknowledge celibacy, so it's kind of seen as normal for atheists not to have sex as long as they're not partner or married. In the case of if someone doesn't want romance for a significant other, it's seen as odd. Since marriage is pretty much a standard that is expected of everyone in the majority of the population.
Okay, so the Indonesian society really puts a lot of value on partnership and marriage. And usually when people are in their teenage years or even when they're young adults, they are expected to start dating or have partners. That does also depend on their beliefs. So usually like young adults who are in their 20s, if they are conservative Muslims, they might be encouraged to start doing ta'aruf, which is kind of like matchmaking, which we have explained before. But other beliefs or other people who are more liberal, they also tend to think that people should be partnered. So whenever there's things like family gatherings, there's always going to be like the aunt or the uncle or the grandma who asks, when are you going to get married? Or where's your partner? Where's your girlfriend? Where's your boyfriend? And if we are not aiming for something like that, if we're not interested in dating, romance, or marriage, it is seen as odd by the society. And then people have a tendency to kind of like meddle in someone else's business. So it can be quite challenging for people who identify as aromantic or asexual to navigate through that part of our culture.
So for medical professionals, knowledge of asexuality in Indonesia. Since asexual visibility and awareness is still very low, there aren't any known corrective therapies specifically aimed towards asexuals, and they are more likely aimed toward other LGBTQ plus identities.
So we have heard stories of people who are at first they're unaware of their asexuality, So some of them go to doctors to get checked or maybe to find out what's wrong with them. But in the end, asexuality is still not really known by medical professionals. So usually people who find out that they're asexual get it from like information on the internet, which is very limited in Indonesian language. And the treatment that the medical professionals give to the patients are also unknown. So there is also another point about people who are already married. So there is still a lot of patriarchy in Indonesian culture, and females are basically expected to accept sex with their husband, even though they don't enjoy it or when it's not pleasurable for them. So whether the person is allo or ace, it is kind of expected by society that the females would just kind of like go with it, and then females will usually be expected to just accept and get used to having sex with their partners. So basically, even though there's not really like a corrective therapy that's aimed towards asexuals, people in general are just like expected to have sex even if they don't enjoy it, because they have to basically like please their husband because of the patriarchy. And there is a lot of child marriage. So in less developed areas, maybe like outside of the city or in villages, women are expected to marry young. So sometimes when they hit puberty, they get matchmaked, and then they marry older men. And then they're also expected to have children as soon as possible. So education is not really, it's not really the priority, but the society tends to prioritize more about getting married and also making children.
So there are a few significant initiatives by the Indonesian ace community, such as survey, research, meeting, and also spreading awareness in regional language, such as what we do here in Indo-Aspec.
So these are the points that we are able to do for now, because sadly in Indonesia, general LGBTQIA awareness is also still very low, and there is a lot of backlash towards the LGBTQ community. So it is still impossible for us to have things such as pride walks or maybe like conferences. So so far what our group, what Indo-Aspec is trying to do is just to spread more awareness so that people in any kind of spectrum, in any kind of identity, can know more about asexuality.
As for what we do here, for our vision is to spread awareness, especially to Indonesians, because a lot of Indonesians are not really fluent in English, because it's a very big country and education tends to be different from island to island, from city to city. It depends on how big it is. And so we're going to look for resources, translate them into more Indonesian friendly. And there are some goals for our first year after founding, which is to maybe start making a community. I mean, like a more active community that maybe could work together with the international community. And yeah.
So Indo-Aspec has been founded for just 1 month. So we do have a lot of plans that we are slowly trying to build, and hopefully in the future we will have a big enough community to participate in other international events, such as for example like Pride Month, or maybe International Asexuality Week, or other things like that. So basically our focus is to spread awareness and education first, and then hopefully once the society has more understanding of asexuality, we might also have a Discord server that's open for anybody to talk or maybe share and also ask questions. But for now, our focus is still spreading awareness and education through our platform, which is on Instagram. Okay, so this is the end of our presentation for today. Thank you very much for tuning in. And we are proud Indonesians, and we are very happy to be able to participate in this symposium. Thank you very much.
Thank you.